It's 11:12 p.m., and you're refreshing a bank dashboard that shouldn't matter as much as it does. The number is small enough to memorize. Rent is due in 3 days. Your phone buzzes with a message from your landlord, polite but firm. You calculate how many hours you need to cover it, how many shifts you can stack without collapsing, how long you can keep pretending this is temporary. Then your email refreshes. At first, you think it's spam. Subject line, urgent, estate transfer confirmation. You almost delete it. You don't remember entering any lottery, no distant relatives wealthy enough to matter. But the sender domain is legitimate. The attachment is encrypted. There's a number in the preview, too long to process in a glance. You open it. You don't understand it at first. The formatting is formal, legal, dense with clauses you don't read. But the number is there again, clearer now, impossible to ignore. You count zeros. You lose track. You count again. 1 trillion. You think it's a glitch, a misplaced decimal. You log into your bank. The dashboard struggles to load. Then it appears. The number is real. Before you can react, your phone rings. Unknown number. You hesitate, then answer. A calm voice confirms your identity. They speak like this is routine, like people become trillionaires every night at 11:14 p.m. They explain that a private individual, no name disclosed, has transferred controlling ownership of multiple holding companies, sovereign debt instruments, infrastructure assets, and liquid capital reserves into your name. The structure is complex, but the summary is simple. You now control more wealth than most nations. You ask why. They don't answer. They say a team will arrive in the morning. Security, legal, financial. You are advised not to make any transactions until then. There are risks, market destabilization, regulatory triggers, attention you are not prepared for. You hang up. For a few seconds, nothing changes. You're still sitting in the same chair, in the same room, with the same overdue rent. Then the weight of the number settles in. Not excitement, not yet. Pressure. You realize something immediately. This is not money you can spend. It's money that moves the world. If you move it wrong, things break. At 6:03 a.m., your doorbell rings. They don't look like what you expect. No theatrics, no visible weapons, just precise, efficient people who move like they already know every detail of your life. They confirm your identity again, sweep your apartment, replace your phone, hand you a new one already loaded with contacts you don't recognize. You're told your previous life is effectively over. Not by force, by consequence. Your name is now tied to markets, governments, competitors who won't wait to see if you're competent. You have assets in energy, logistics, pharmaceuticals, defense, data infrastructure. You employ millions directly or indirectly. Your decisions will ripple through supply chains, employment rates, political stability. You don't get time to process. They brief you on the first crisis. One of the companies you now control is heavily leveraged in emerging markets. A currency shift overnight has put it at risk of default. If it collapses, it drags 3 banks with it. If the banks fall, the region destabilizes. If the region destabilizes, you trigger a cascade you can't contain. You ask what your options are. They give you 3. Inject capital to stabilize the company. It costs tens of billions immediately, more long-term. It saves the system, but locks you into a failing structure. Let it fail. Contain the damage. Accept the fallout. Job losses, political backlash, potential unrest. Or restructure aggressively. Cut divisions, liquidate assets, prioritize survival over stability. It saves the core, but sacrifices thousands of livelihoods. You realize this is the first decision you make as a trillionaire. You choose to restructure. It feels logical. Controlled damage is better than uncontrolled collapse. You authorize the plan. Within hours, markets react. Stock prices swing, news leaks, analysts speculate, employees begin to panic. You watch numbers move in real time, each shift representing consequences you can't fully see yet. By the end of the day, the company stabilizes. By the end of the week, layoffs begin. You tell yourself it was necessary. You don't sleep that night. Days blur into decisions. Each one is larger than the last. You learn quickly that wealth at this scale isn't about buying things, it's about controlling outcomes. And every outcome has a cost. You build a structure around yourself, advisors, analysts, security, layers between you and the raw data, because without them, the volume is overwhelming. Even with them, you're constantly behind. You discover that people don't talk to you the same way anymore. There's always an angle, always a calculation. Governments invite you to private meetings, CEOs request partnerships, activists target you as a symbol of everything wrong with the system. You try to stay neutral. Neutrality doesn't exist here. 6 months in, you face your second major crisis. A pharmaceutical subsidiary holds a patent on a drug that treats a widespread disease. The pricing model is profitable, extremely profitable, but restricts access in lower-income regions. Advocacy groups push you to lower prices. Your advisors warn that doing so sets a precedent. It affects revenue projections, investor confidence, your ability to fund other operations. You run the numbers. Lowering prices saves lives. It also reduces your leverage in multiple markets. It weakens your position against competitors who won't make the same choice. You hesitate. Then you lower the price. The response is immediate. Public praise, media attention. But internally there's friction. Some executives see it as a sign of unpredictability. Investors question your priorities. A competitor moves aggressively into one of your weaker sectors, exploiting the perceived instability. You realize that every moral decision creates strategic vulnerability. You adjust. Over the next few years, you become more precise, less reactive. You stop thinking in terms of right and wrong and start thinking in terms of impact and sustainability. You learn to balance optics with outcomes, to make decisions that appear ethical while preserving your position. It doesn't always feel good, but it works. Your influence grows, not just financially, but politically. Governments consult you before implementing policies that might affect your industries. You begin to shape regulations instead of reacting to them. You tell yourself it's for stability. There's a moment about 3 years in when you realize you can move markets intentionally. You test it. A small shift, a reallocation of capital, enough to signal confidence in a struggling sector. Others follow. The sector recovers. It feels like control. It also feels dangerous. You start to see patterns, feedback loops, how perception drives reality, how your decisions, even when rational, can create unintended consequences simply because of who you are. You become more careful and more isolated. Relationships change. Old friends drift away, not of malice, but because there's no common ground anymore. New connections are transactional. Even trust becomes strategic. You build safeguards, independent audits, checks on your own authority, not because anyone forces you to, but because you understand what happens if you don't. Then comes the crisis that tests everything. A geopolitical conflict escalates in a region where you hold critical infrastructure assets, energy pipelines, communication networks, logistics hubs. Both sides rely on your systems. Both sides pressure you to choose. If you support one, you alienate the other. You risk sanctions, asset seizures, retaliation. If you try to remain neutral, both sides may decide you're an obstacle. Your advisors split. Some argue for alignment, others for withdrawal. A few suggest leveraging the situation for strategic gain. You feel the weight of it. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about lives, stability, the potential for escalation. You decide to maintain operations for both sides under strict neutrality. It's the most balanced option. It's also the most fragile.
Within weeks, one side accuses you of indirectly supporting their enemy. Sanctions are threatened. Your assets in that region are at risk. You respond by restructuring ownership through a network of entities designed to insulate operations from political pressure. It's complex, borderline opaque, but legal. It buys you time. It also draws scrutiny. Media narratives shift. You're no longer just a wealthy individual. You're a power center, a variable in global equations. You adapt again. Years pass. You refine your approach. You learn to anticipate crises before they fully form, to position yourself in ways that reduce risk without appearing defensive, to make decisions that align with long-term stability, even when they conflict with short-term gains. Your wealth grows, but it stops feeling like growth. It's just scale. You think back to that night refreshing a bank dashboard over rent. The contrast is almost abstract. You have more resources than you can ever use personally, but less freedom than you had when you had nothing. Every move is analyzed. Every decision carries weight. You start to question the origin of the transfer. Why you? The answer never comes, but the question changes you. You begin to shift your strategy, not away from control, but toward resilience. You invest heavily in systems that outlast you, renewable infrastructure, decentralized technologies, education networks, things that reduce dependency on any single entity, including yourself. Some see it as visionary. Others see it as a threat. Because a world that doesn't need you is a world where your power diminishes. You accept that, or at least you try to. Then, one evening, years into this life, you're presented with a report. It outlines a scenario, a convergence of risks: climate, economic instability, technological disruption. Individually manageable, together catastrophic. Your analysts don't frame it as a possibility, they frame it as a timeline. You realize that everything you've been doing, every decision, has been within systems that may not hold. For the first time since that night, the number in your account feels irrelevant. You're not just managing wealth anymore. You're managing collapse, or trying to prevent it. You convene your teams, expand your models, increase investments in mitigation strategies. It's massive, coordinated, global. It's also not enough on its own. You need cooperation from governments, corporations, entities that don't answer to you. You step into a new role, not just a decision maker, but a negotiator between powers that don't trust each other. You use your position to align incentives to make cooperation more profitable than conflict. It's slow, fragile, but it starts to work. Small agreements, shared frameworks, incremental progress. You know it can unravel at any moment, and you know that if it does, no amount of money will fix it. You sit in a room one day, years after that first email, surrounded by people who represent entire nations, and you realize something simple and unsettling. You never chose this, but now you can't step away. Because stepping away isn't neutral. It's a decision with consequences, just like every other. You think about the person you were, refreshing that dashboard, worrying about rent. The problems were smaller, but they were yours, contained. Now everything is interconnected. You make one more decision, not the last. There is no last, just the next, and the next, and the weight that comes with knowing that at this scale, even doing your best doesn't guarantee anything. You're still a trillionaire, but that was never the point. The point is what you do next, and what it costs.